The director of The Sand-Eating Shark today here with us. Thank you so much for being here with us today and talking about your film, sticking around. I want to congratulate you first on your 6 nominations for The Sand-Eating Shark. That's insane. That's incredible. And really excited to start talking about this film with you.
If you want to launch me on the history of the film, I'm happy to start with that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
We were actually filming for another show in the same island of Fernando de Noronha, which is offshore Brazil. There is an incredible concentration of sharks and sardines from the top of the cliff. You can see it. You'll never see the shark eating sardines, but you'll see the shark swimming alongside sardines. So it was kind of a sardine run, but very close to the shore. So I never heard about anything like that before, involving lemon sharks. And, as wildlife filmmakers, we are always after these kind of stories where, you need to bring something new. And the story started with the name that the Brazilian gave to the sharks. They call them paparia, which means sand-eating shark. And the reason why they give that name is because they never see the shark eating any sardines, despite they spend a lot of time with the sardines. So, and since they spend a lot of time in the surf zone, they decided just to give that name, the sand-eating shark.
Now you're making the film, you've chosen these sharks as your subject. How'd you land on Manoela as your sort of main shark subject to focus on?
Well, basically, there is more female than male, strangely enough, in Fernando de Noronha. And we built that story around the destiny of that female shark. In a sense, that's an imaginary character, but we had a lot of female sharks at different stages of their growth. And so we decided to tell the story of Manoela. And Manoela encompasses basically every kind of shark you can find around the island. What she does, well, basically every single shark in the island does it. Doesn't have any specific trait of character of Manoela. She's not neither shy, she's neither bold. She's a typical lemon shark from Fernando de Noronha.
You mentioned in there that your job as a filmmaker is you want to tell a compelling story in addition to presenting all this information. I feel like you use the music very well in this film.
Since I didn't want to invade the viewer with a lot of voiceover, I decided to give a lot of respite in that movie. And I've got a long-standing relation with the composer. We've made a lot of film together called Samuel Safa. And we use natural instruments. We mix natural instruments with other synthesizer or other sound effects. They are used to immerse the viewer. So in a sense, we made some space in the cutting room during the editing for the music. And then we spent a long time discussing with the composer. There's been a lot of to and fro discussion to reach a consensus of what we wanted. So yes, indeed, we did put a lot of emphasis, and there is probably you can find it online, a making of that music available online. So there is a trick that we use in Europe that you send your partitions to Bulgaria, and they record the soundtrack for you. You don't have the orchestra for yourself. Probably 10 documentary composer like I am are using that symphonic orchestra. I'm not the BBC. I'm not having the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra of Sir David Attenborough at my disposal. So what I do is that I use a trick like this one. And of course, we had some cellos, we had individual instruments that we love to play with. So a quatuor is mostly what I've been using for this movie.
How do you decide when to implement that slow motion effect?
We use slow motion when there is a language. There is the language of when the fish are doing things that human eye cannot see. And so basically the tuna, which we're after, the anchovies, this is going too fast for your eye. You can't realize what's going on. So we had to use 1,000 frames per second camera, which slows down the action 40 times to be able to see what the tuna were doing. We had no idea when we were filming them. We just see poof, a big splash. And then we had to wait for the slow motion camera to deliver. And then we realized that this tuna was just jumping in the air after a very small anchovy and making 2 meter high jumps after that. And even the needlefish, it was doing the same. We had absolutely no idea what he was doing until we see the slow motion.
Was there an appearance that kind of surprised you that you didn't expect to capture on camera?
Actually, the tuna was kind of a surprise because we were not expecting to see them that far south, but they are there, offshore, and doing a lot of damages on the anchovies. The power of those fish belonging to this family, the jack, of the great trevally, that are similar to great trevallies, as just a distant cousin. These are absolutely incredible animals.
How did you go about choosing the narrator, and why did you choose that narrator style?
In contrast to the existing old and overconfident British voices you could hear, I wanted to have a guy who was slightly unsure of himself and just to give a chance to the viewer to plunge into the movie rather than being, stumbled by the voice of God.
What do you hope your documentary does to help change the reputation of lemon sharks and just sharks in general?
You have, such documentaries, when you're having a character as a main role, is inevitably going to bring some empathy toward the shark. You want to know the destiny of that shark. Maybe in the next year or two, there'll be a lot of babies that will be called Manoela. Not sure, who knows? But, because after the main character. But that is the kind of thing where give a chance to emerge and follow. Of course, that animal hasn't been harmed or anything, but you can see her with a hook in her mouth. That you think that there is a lot of shark with hook in their stomach, and some are just disappearing, damage being created. But if you go to Florida and if you dive offshore Florida, you see many sharks with hooks in their mouth, and people are doing a good job actually at just stopping the shark and removing the mouth. So what they're going to do to the shark population is to create some national parks. What they've done in Fernando and Noronha is absolutely marvelous. It works. It definitely works. Every national park, if you can, preserve, that's good for the vicinity. The mature animal are doing a lot of babies that are just everywhere in the ocean. So we have the power of creating a national park. You just don't focus on one species. You focus on an ecosystem, and that's what's needed. We bring value to tourism. We bring value. A live shark worth more dollars than a dead shark. That's the message I like to pass.
What surprised you in the filmmaking process? Was there anything that was unexpected that popped up?
Well, I was not expecting to find the needlefish both offshore and close to shore, because for me, that's a fantastic link between the nearshore habitat that the Manoela is in and the offshore habitat where the tuna are. So that makes a fantastic transition for me. Diving, I've never seen any needlefish offshore. That's the first time I saw them, and then the tuna gets them. I can't be more happy with that.
How would you say this film compares to your others?
We are tenacious. If you saw some of my previous shows, sometimes it took us 4 years to make the portrait of an individual animal. Mm-hmm. There is a show currently on YouTube that I made in between 1996 and year 2000 to tell the story of a killer whale offshore. It's another archipelago. It's called Crozet. And it took us 4 years. This film, I only needed 2 years to make it happen. So again, I was happy and lucky. And we face a lot of competition these days of guys like Netflix that are funding a lot of shows which are catalog films. Like, you're just one postcard, plus the next postcard, plus the next postcard. And making such films, it's a big bet. You're never sure you're going to be able to succeed. So I'm happy to be able to do that, because it's, the good stories are evergreen, because you could see the movie in 10 years, in 20 years, in 50 years. There is still a lot of emotion in it. And this is why we are more interested in doing this kind of character-led films.
One silly question and then one serious question. The first silly question is, why is there never any documentaries on the suckerfish, the remora that hangs around the shark? It's always all about the shark. It's never about the remora.
Well, you know what? I had one in stock. It's one of my pitch to Montio. Yeah.
So there's an audience for it.
Yeah. At least you are the audience. It hasn't been a success so far. My my pitch hasn't ended anywhere. But yeah, so definitely, this is a wise thought. There's definitely a story to be told.
Yes, absolutely. Because I love when there's some activity, just hangs back, watches, and he starts sucking up on the fish again. Anyway, and you see them in every documentary. They're adorable little creatures. No, my serious question is, who is your scientific advisor? Like, do you have a scientific panel that advises you?
Yeah, I've got two of them. There is one guy that was working there in Fernando de Noronha, and there is a guy called Eric Luard, a French scientist who works on the personality of sharks, which is a very interesting subject. To make a long story short, the application, direct application to that is that whenever there is a shark attack, what do? Are you killing all the sharks in that place? Or you're trying to find the shark that is responsible of this attack? And this is what Eric Luard, he works like a profiler. So he's got a big knowledge on sharks and their individual behavior. And it's great for me to rely on such knowledge.
Can you tell us a little bit about the organization that you work for?
Yeah, we started Synopsis in 1995, so that's more 25 years ago now. We founded it on the concept that there was no companies in France that allowed you to do what we had in mind. So doing big international wildlife shows based on story. But it's not only wildlife, we do as well science. And with the need of science, there's so many nice science stories to be told. We start using a lot of VFX in our stories. And to the point where in 2012, we had a big contract for telling a dinosaur show. And we now have an in-house VFX company doing a lot of space, dinosaurs and other things. And so we are preparing shark shows now for domes. It's basically an indie Prayogo with an in-house VFX company for science and domes and museum and giant screens as well. And so, yeah, it's just, you can do a lot of show being based in Marseille in the south of France.
What have you, Monsieur Bertrand Loyer, learned about yourself through the making of your film, The Sand-Eating Shark?
Well, this is a behind the scene that is not shown in the film. I've learned that compared to the Brazilian, I'm a very bad surfer.